Alright everyone, let's talk about all the Easter eggs, references, and things that you might have missed in Star Wars Rise of Skywalker. Did you think this was a fitting into the Skywalker saga, or was it?
No! Not great, Bob!
This is ScreenCrush. Very big spoilers for Rise of Skywalker are ahead. The first line of the crawl is, "The dead speak!" This is in contrast with the overall message of The Last Jedi.
It's time to let old things die.
The opening crawl reveals that Palpatine, the big bad of the series, has returned. The opening crawl references the Emperor sending messages across the galaxy, which, if you played the game Fortnite, you could actually listen to.
At last the work of generations is complete. The great error is corrected.
But if you don't play Fortnite, I guess you just gotta take the movie's word for it. Kylo Ren is hunting down a Sith Wayfinder. This device is shaped like a pyramid, similar to the Sith holocrons that we saw in Star Wars Rebels. These are basically flash drives that you can open with the dark side of the Force. The Sith Wayfinder also appears in the Jedi texts. When Kylo enters the caverns below Exegol, there are several enormous statues of Sith looming around him. Notice the planet is surrounded by lightning storms, which evoke the Sith's blue finger lightning.
Weren't those like sparkles out of your fingers, like lightning maybe?
Palpatine says, "I made Snoke," just before Kylo walks past a jar full of Snokes. Then Palpatine reveals that he was the one manipulating Ben all along. What? He explains his resurrection with a line quoted from Revenge of the Sith.
The dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural.
And along the way, we hear an echo of his grandfather, Darth Vader.
Inside your head.
We're going to go into detail about how the Emperor was resurrected in another video and talk about how it was foreshadowed in the comics and books, so keep an eye out for that. But this concept is based partially on the non-canon comic book Star Wars Dark Empire. In that book, Palpatine resurrected himself through cloning on a dark side world called Biss. Exegol is a dark side world, but it's in the unknown regions of the galaxy, not the core like Biss was. Now, the unknown regions are a part of the galaxy that's really hard to get to, so nobody's ever bothered. We have to use the Aftermath trilogy of novels to fill in some of the blanks here. These books take place immediately after Return of the Jedi, all the way through the Battle of Jakku. After the Battle of Endor, the Imperials who were most loyal to Palpatine used a map created to take them to this place so they could rebuild. He called this new fleet the Final Order. Then we check in with the good guys, where we learn that Chewbacca is unbeatable at holo chess, like Noob Master 69 unbeatable. It makes sense, he's had years of practice.
No, you can't wipe them off. They're holograms.
There have been a couple cosmetic changes to the Millenium Falcon. The rectangular radar dish that was shot off in Last Jedi has been replaced with the more traditional round dish. Also, the ship now has a small resistance symbol on its roof. Poe escapes the First Order by jumping repeatedly through different locations at light speed. This is something we first learned was possible in The Force Awakens when Han jumps the Falcon into the Starkiller base's atmosphere. Now, one of the planets they jump to looks an awful lot like Coruscant, the only time we've seen the planet in the sequel trilogy. Meanwhile, Rey is training using a helmet with a blast shield and a training droid like we saw in New Hope and Attack of the Clones. She ends up beating the probe with a stick, conquering technology with nature, kind of like the Ewoks in Return of the Jedi. This also seems similar to the training exercises Leia does with Luke in the flashback. Appropriate, since Leia is the one training Rey. Personally, I like how they reappropriated old Carrie Fisher footage from Force Awakens and Last Jedi. Some of her lines were in deleted scenes that we've already seen released.
Never underestimate a droid.
Now, it obviously wasn't ideal, but at least it gave her an on-screen goodbye, instead of explaining a major plot point in the opening crawl. I mean, who would do that? The Mon Cala at the base is named Aftab. He plays a prominent role in the Rise of Skywalker preview comic, where we learn that he's the son of Admiral Akbar. Poe even calls him Junior in this scene. When the heroes make their plan, Poe literally says, "Palpatine has been pulling the strings all along." And I almost expected him to turn to the camera and say it directly to us. Meanwhile, Kylo Ren uses Vader's mask to channel the dark side of the Force. And there's actually precedence for this in the comics. Darth Maul was a renegade Sith Lord 1,000 years ago whose essence was trapped inside of his mask. We finally meet the Knights of Ren who were teased in The Force Awakens.
Master of the Knights of Ren.
Now, we don't know much about them. They're basically Kylo's ring wraiths, but they do look pretty cool. The heroes go to Jeddah, where they are celebrating a festival that occurs every 42 years. This is a nod to A New Hope, which premiered 42 years ago in 1977. Kylo rebuilds his mask with red lines in the cracks. Now, this shows the dark side is surging under the surface, threatening to break out. Or, as Rey says, it could be an indication of the cracks in his facade. When the heroes meet Lando, he's wearing a mask just like he first did in Return of the Jedi, and he's the one who gets to say,
"I got a bad feeling about this."
There's a tiny hint of Poe's criminal past when he hotwires a speeder. Later we'll learn that he was also a spice runner. Now, spice is basically the Star Wars version of drugs, meaning that before becoming a leader in the Resistance, Poe was a coke mule.
You wanna buy some death sticks?
The stormtroopers have jetpacks, like the jet troopers we've seen in the comics and multiple video games, but this is the first time they've appeared in a movie. The heroes end up in quicksand, which mirrors the trash compactor in New Hope, and them being trapped underground with the monster is similar to Luke's encounter with the Rancor. Finn has something he wants to tell Rey. This is similar to Luke holding off on telling Leia about their true relationship in Return of the Jedi.
What is it?
Ask me again sometime.
So what was it? Doesn't matter, moving on. C-3PO says he can't read the dagger because of a law passed by the Galactic Senate. Now, this could be because after the Sith were defeated 1,000 years ago, they didn't want anyone to try rebuilding their evil order. Or remember, Palpatine controlled the government.
I am the Senate.
So maybe he had this law passed so no one else could track down Sith artifacts, or at least to cover his tracks. Rey heals the snake, and this is a new Force ability that recently debuted in The Mandalorian, when Baby Yoda heals Greef Karga. Now this makes perfect sense, given that the Force is created by life.
Life creates it, makes it grow.
Kylo Ren's ship is a TIE silencer, and it's modeled after the TIE interceptors that we first saw in Return of the Jedi. During her Force-off with Kylo Ren, she loses control and summons Force Lightning. Personally, I thought her accidentally killing Chewbacca was a great moment. It raised the stakes of the movie, and it made me genuinely afraid that she would turn to the dark side later on. But of course, later on, it turned out that Chewie was just fine.
I'm not dead!
They take C-3PO to Kijimi, where composer John Williams gets a Star Wars cameo as a bartender. Williams has said this will be the last Star Wars movie he'll be composing. 3PO, by the way, is the MVP of this movie with most of the funniest lines, especially when he tells Poe that he's all right when they're in the tunnels. Now, I was surprised that when he was shutting down, or when R2 rebooted him, that he didn't reveal any information from the prequels. I expected there to be some kind of reference to Master Anakin somewhere in there.
Oh no.
You know, because this movie's supposed to be like Avengers Endgame. It's going to call back everything that's ever existed before. In Babu's shop, we can see battle droids from the prequel trilogy and the legs from a super battle droid that we first saw in Attack of the Clones. When the heroes get on the ship to rescue Chewie, Rey senses something in the Force and leaves the group, just like Obi-Wan in A New Hope and Luke in Return of the Jedi. She finds Kylo's private trophy room, including Vader's mask sitting on a pillar of obsidian. Now, this pillar is probably from Mustafar, the dark side world where Vader became Vader and where he kept his castle. Kylo asks if she's still counting the days since her parents left, which we saw her do in Force Awakens. Then he reveals to her that his earlier reveal to her about her parents
They're filthy junk traders who sold you off for drinking money.
Was incomplete, and she's actually been a Palpatine all along. Alright, so let's do this. She's a Palpatine. What do you guys think of that? There's a lot of questions raised about how much Leia knew and if she planned this the whole time, that we have to get into that in another video. So subscribe and click the bell to get that alert when it comes out. Anyways, Kylo says that he and Rey are a dyad in the Force, two lives joined together that balance one another out. This could be a major reveal about...
You refer to the prophecy of the one who will bring balance to the Force.
Now, could it be that both Rey and Kylo were the chosen ones who were prophesized to...
destroy the Sith and bring balance to the Force?
Now, even though Rey got the killing blow, she would have caved if it wasn't for Kylo. Thoughts? Kylo tells Rey they should join forces to take down Palpatine, which is exactly what Vader proposed to Luke.
Luke, you can destroy the Emperor.
And then the heroes travel to one of the moons of Endor. Just for clarification, Endor is a planet and the Ewoks live on one of the planet's moons. So this is a separate moon where some of the Death Star's rebel landed. Rey uses the dagger, Goonies style, to track down the Sith Wayfinder. While she uses her scavenger skills to climb through the Death Star, she's near this platform. This is a tracking beam control panel like we saw in A New Hope. And by the way, what did you think of the way that Rey used the dagger? I thought she would have used it like the Force or something, or it would glow when she got closer to the artifact. I kind of thought that the random look through the dagger Goonies reveal was dumb. What about you? In the throne room, the Emperor's theme from Return of the Jedi plays, followed by the Imperial March on soft piano notes like we heard during Vader's death. Rey has a vision of herself as Evil Rey. She even does one of these jump scares. Now, this is similar to Luke's vision of himself as Vader in The Empire Strikes Back, but it's also both a callback and a repudiation of Rey's vision from Last Jedi. And in that scene, her reflection reveals that she is only herself. and she has no greater connection to anyone. Then Leia gives her life to turn her son to the good side and purge him of Palpatine's influence. As she does this, she holds onto one of the medals awarded to the human heroes at the end of A New Hope. Ben has a conversation with his dad that's basically a repeat of Han's death in Force Awakens.
I know what I have to do, but I don't know if I have the strength to do it.
They're very clear to point out that this is Kylo's memory of his father and not a Force ghost. During the conversation, Han says, "I know," which is a callback to
I love you.
I know.
Elsewhere, Palpatine calls Leia the Princess of Alderaan. Now this is a little detail that I liked a lot. Most people in this universe wouldn't think of her like that because they weren't alive when Alderaan was still a planet. But to Palpatine, this is how he first knew her. It's like an old man who calls them the Brooklyn Dodgers. Afterwards, Rey travels to Act 2 and talks with Force ghost Luke. Now this whole scene is a mirror of Return of the Jedi. In both movies, a Force ghost of a dead Jedi Master confirms to the hero what the villain already told them, that they're secretly related to somebody important. And he tells the hero that he knew her real identity the entire time. Now this is a little bit of a retcon.
Who are you?
But it does explain a few things, like why Rey scared Luke so much in The Last Jedi.
You went straight to the dark, and you didn't even try to stop yourself.
Also, how Rey was so powerful with the Force so quickly.
You will remove these restraints and leave this cell with the door open.
Luke also reveals that Leia walked away from her Jedi training because she knew her son would turn evil. So maybe that's the reason Luke was so quick to turn on Ben in the flashback in Last Jedi. He felt the dark side, and he also knew that Ben was destined to fall. And by the way, Luke and Leia's flashback training looked like it was in a jungle. This could have taken place on Yavin 4, where Luke started his Jedi Academy in the Legends novels. Luke tells Rey she has to face Palpatine like he was once told.
Vader, you must confront Vader.
Then Luke raises the X-Wing from the water just like Yoda did in Empire and just like everybody expected him to do in Last Jedi. When Rey flies away, she's wearing a Rebellion helmet just like she did for fun on planet Jakku. C-3PO introduces himself to R2-D2 just like he did in Phantom Menace.
A pleasure to meet you. I am C-3PO Human-Cyborg Relations.
When the Resistance make plans, they mention pulling off a Holdo maneuver. This is named after Vice Admiral Holdo, the hero from the Battle of Crate in The Last Jedi. In the final battle, we see a slew of ships from Star Wars past, including the Razor Crest from Mandalorian, the Ghost from Star Wars Rebels, a Mon Cala cruiser, Han's freighter from Force Awakens, and a Hammerhead Corvette. Hammerhead Corvette! Dornian gunships, a Star Fortress bomber, Nebulon's B and C frigates, and there's also familiar fighters like the A-Wing, Y-Wing, and B-Wing.
Bring me everyone. What do you mean everyone?
But most importantly is this ship. That's your mom. When Lando rescues Finn and Janet, they land on the roof of the Falcon just like he rescued Luke in The Empire Strikes Back. And we get another super weapon, guys, like the Death Star and Starkiller base. Except now they're on every ship, so everybody gets to be Luke Skywalker for a day. Palpatine shows Rey this final battle while it's happening, just like he did for Luke during Return of the Jedi. Now I thought her temptation here was well structured and felt very real, because, like Anakin, she would turn evil for good motives. That's the only reason I could see her turning evil. And when she agrees, he says, "Good." Which is not an Easter egg, I just love the way he says, "Good." But he screwed up when he told her that he needs a host body, meaning Palpatine's master plan was actually the plot of being John Malkovich all along. What? Palpatine's throne is based off concept art that Ralph McQuarrie did for Revenge of the Jedi, back when that was the title of the movie. He created brilliant concept art for all 3 original films. He knocks Ben into a pit, payback for when his granddad did this. And then we get to the final showdown. Rey contains Force lightning with her lightsaber like we saw several Jedi do in the prequels. She gets help from the voices of several past Jedi, including Yoda, Luke, Leia, Qui-Gon Jinn, both Obi-Wans, Kanan Jarrus, Ahsoka Tano, Ezra Bridger, Mace Windu, and Anakin Skywalker. Now this is actually a variation of the original planned ending for Return of the Jedi. That would have shown Force ghosts of Obi-Wan and Yoda helping Luke defeat the Emperor. She turns Palpatine's own lightning against him, the same trick Mace Windu used in Revenge of the Sith. When the final Order ships are defeated, we see them crash on planets like Bespin, the Forest Moon of Endor, and Jakku. This ending in multiple locations echoes the finale of Return of the Jedi Special Edition. One of the Resistance fighters celebrating at the end is a Bothan, and we thank them for their service.
Many Bothans died to bring us this information.
Maz gets a moment with Chewie, but instead of hitting on him,
"Where's my boyfriend?"
she rights an old wrong and gives him the medal he didn't receive at the ending of New Hope. Carl Sagan would be so happy.
You know, all the people got medals, and the Wookiee who'd been in there fighting all the time, he didn't get any medal.
But actually, Chewie already got his medal at the MTV Movie Awards in 1997. Now we get kind of a tease that Lando could be the father of Janna, which is ridiculous because we learned in Solo that Lando's only attracted to droids.
How would that work?
That works.
The movie ends with Rey returning to the Lars homestead. She enters the homestead by sledding on the sand, which is a callback to Force Awakens. She holds a private memorial for Luke and Leia, burying their lightsabers roughly where their grandmother Shmi was buried in Attack of the Clones. There's an old woman there riding the same alien camel that Obi-Wan rode at the end of Revenge of the Sith. In her final scene, she takes the name Skywalker and walks off into the Tatooine sunset. Now this echoes the Western trope of riding off into the sunset, fitting since Star Wars is a Western in space. But also it calls to mind the image of Luke staring off into the setting suns in A New Hope. Alright everybody, that's all the Easter eggs that I found, but if you found any, let me know in the comments below, and if it's your first time here, please subscribe for more Rise of Skywalker content. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.